Y'all have listened to a lot of conversations about marriage and parenting, but this episode that Nick Freitas did with Ken Coleman, so practical and convicting.
Men really need a mission. We really need something that focuses our attention and our energy, because when we hear this term toxic masculinity, there has been a huge problem right now where young men have been starved for leadership. Young men are more conservative and more religious than they've been in the last 60 years.
Correct.
And young women are exactly the opposite.
All right, let's talk about it.
The thing I think that stuck out to me the most was when he was reacting to the other video. There's the Ken Coleman teed up another video where the guy was like, "Work out."
Oh yeah, that old cowboy guy.
Yeah, like get your stuff together. Like basically, like establish yourself, worry about yourself, and then maybe think about marriage and family down the road.
Oh no, sorry, the other guy. The cowboy guy was for the homeschool kids, or the boys need to not be drugged. Sorry, the other guy that is like anti-women or something.
Yeah, there's some guy who's like, I just want to get buff and to get rich or whatever. I don't know. So, and then Freitas is like responding to that, which I thought was really helpful. Where he was just basically like, I'm loose paraphrase, like that's dumb. Don't wait till you're established. Get married young and get established together. Like do that together with your bride. And that to me that seems like kind of obvious, but that's actually controversial in our society, which I've found. I guess I was a little surprised by how many people in the comments pushed back on that, on his video.
What did they say in the comments?
There were people basically like, no, you have to get yourself together. Like, we have to worry about yourself, self-help. So, like, that was basically like, a lot of people were like responding to Freitas in the comments of the original video.
Yeah.
So, but you got married later.
I did.
And so was it just, it obviously wasn't so much of a priority to you, or is that just kind of how it shook out?
Yeah, I got married 1 month shy of my 38th birthday.
Dang.
So I was pretty late in life. And as I think it just sort of, at the moment, it just sort of like how it shook out. But as I didn't realize it. I didn't realize how much I was waiting for things to happen. I was waiting for like triggers in my life.
Interesting.
And I don't think I realized it. I was waiting for like a sense of like stability. And so, I owned a business in my 20s and early 30s, was really successful, and then went bankrupt. And so I was sort of like that. I think if not for that, maybe I would view life differently. But I was waiting to kind of recover from bankruptcy, and like, and now I was in higher education. I was at a point where like my life was starting to feel a little more stable, and then I kind of enter back into dating. And as I look back on it, though, I'm like, oh, actually, had I had a great bride in my life, I think I would have navigated that much better. Now it worked out great for me because I married a great woman, who was 10 years younger than me. And I couldn't marry her in my 20s because I'd be breaking the law. So it worked out for me. But I think as I evaluate most men, I think there are very few men that should go through those things single. I think for the vast majority of men, there's always caveats, there's always exceptions. But for the vast majority of men, 90% or more of men, it is better to get married younger.
Yeah, this is where I have actually changed my mind. Like if I reflect back, I'm like, hey, what are the ways that you've completely changed your mind on certain issues? This is one of them. I used to be like, young marriage is dangerous and you need to find yourself. You need to know who you are first. And I've completely changed on that, specifically when it comes to Christian marriage. But I do think there's still a principle that can apply to non-Christians also growing together. But especially when it comes to Christians who have been parented well, they've been fathered and mothered very well. And they're valuing the right things in marriage or looking for that, and they're finding someone else who has that same background and those same values and priorities, and they have a maturity, and of course they're going to continue to grow. One of my favorite lines on this I heard from a pastor recently is, "Me and my wife, we got it together." And so we didn't have to wait till everything was perfect financially. We did life together. We built things together, and I think the danger. Like there is a danger to getting married too young, where it's like, oh, I wasn't wise enough, and the pairing was wrong. Like it was the wrong pairing. And one of the big things he talks about in that video too, Freitas, is that if he had one piece of marriage advice, it would be that you are committed to Christ, that you're anchored in Christ. So like that has to be the common denominator for any marriage to be successful, but especially if you're thinking about getting married young, it's like both of you, like the commitment to Christ must be genuine, must be real. And I think any time that you see it go awry is when that's not the case. It doesn't mean it still might not be bumpy along the road, but I think if you find two young people, let's say they're 20 years old, who have been discipled really well, they have a spiritual maturity, they've been trained to value the right things to look for in a spouse, and they've thought through the pairing and the potential, red flags. They have biblical wisdom and godly people in their life helping them through this decision, right? When that's the case, I think it's the ideal scenario because you get to build that life together. And then people, we can all see the dangers of what if you choose the wrong person, you're too young, you didn't really know what you wanted. But what we're seeing more and more of in today's world is the opposite of that. Of what happens when you don't commit and you wait way too long. Mm. And this, to me, this prolonged adolescence, especially for young men, has been so damaging to young men. And then, it's also affected, obviously, there's a whole population of incredible single ladies out there, and we know several of them, me and my wife, we're always trying to find them good men, that wish they had a godly man in their life. But there's so many, even Christian-raised guys who are like, oh, yeah, I'm not ready to commit yet. And all of a sudden, they're in their late 20s. It gets harder and harder at that point to merge lives. So yes, are there risks to getting married young? 100% there's risks. But don't discount the risk of waiting longer and longer. It gets harder to find the right person the longer you wait, because it is true, especially for Christians. This is the way I felt. Because I kind of was in the middle. I got married at 27 is when I got married. And my wife was 24. And I went to a Christian college, and we called it the marriage meal on the hill. It was on the mountain, right? So it's everybody seemed like they paired up and they got married in college.
Ring by spring or your money back.
Exactly, that type of feel, right? And it didn't happen for me. I didn't find that person there. Never worked out. And I'm like, okay, no worries. But the longer it kind of got disconnected from that Christian college, I'm like, oh, seems like all the girls were taken by the time they were 21, 22. What happened to them all? And thankfully, God had a plan for me and brought me and my wife together. It's a beautiful thing. But I think there's a real reality to that too, especially when you're looking for a very specific type of spouse, that the good ones do get taken younger. So you should have a bias to find that person as soon as you can.
Yeah, my second time around, I was like, oh, okay, everyone my age is divorced with a child.
Yeah.
So if I would like to not marry someone who's divorced with a child, I got to go find someone who's younger.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I wasn't, for me, so my thinking on this is just pursue both. So if you're young, not even, I don't even know that I would advise young men to pursue, to try really hard to find a wife. The advice that I've given Tristan, so my little brother Tristan, he's 22 now, and he asked me one time about it. And I was telling him, I was like, Tristan, if I were you, I would just focus on building competence, get really good at stuff, because it's super attractive to women. It's really attractive when a woman sees that a guy is working on his own skill development. And that's been my experience. The more my own skill development the more I've focused on getting competent at stuff, the more attractive I seem to have been to women. And that's the case with Tristan. The more he develops his skills with the piano and goes and plays at gigs and stuff, the more attractive, and the more that gets showcased, the more attractive he is to women. Now, that's not necessarily the set of traits that a woman really ought to be looking for, but I think biologically women tend to be attracted to men that when they look at the guy, they think, oh, this man has a future that he is going after. And that was something that was attractive to Nicole. So, but then I would just say that's something that you shouldn't wait until that comes to fruition before you then get married. Right. Because to some degree, every woman, unless you're just a 60-year-old fully established man, to some degree, every woman is marrying potential. So even thinking back on my marriage with Nicole, she's, even though I was a touring kids book author when we met, and so there was some establishment of like what it is that my life looks like and what it is that I'm doing and what it is that I'm about. She still married a ton of potential because like what we do now came from that, but is very different from that.
I think this is a really good point, and because you're right, to some degree, you're always marrying somebody and hoping to see that potential continue to grow and develop, right? Because we all should be growing. Also, at the same time, I think where Christians get it wrong, the ones that are uber excited to be married, is they index too much on potential, and they're like, oh, I think he has the potential to get there. He's going to get there, or she'll come around. And I just heard Bodhi Bachum's sermon on this recently, and he's talking to young women, and he's like,
I saw this one.
do not basically. So many young women will tell you, so many older women actually tell you that have had heartbreak in their marriage, that they married for potential. Basically, they were looking for, they kind of were attracted more towards the status of the man or the looks of the man, and they were hoping that the godliness would come. And his whole message was, you have to be looking for the man whose godliness you want shepherding your family. And so that's something that's like, if you don't see the godliness already there, not just the potential for it to get there one day. Oh, he seems to be open to God.
Right.
Big red flag. Like the godliness should be there and the leadership should be there, especially for men. You should see like their spiritual leadership. It shouldn't be something that, oh, I think he could get there. I think he might. Yeah, he can grow in spiritual leadership, but you should see that even at 19, 18, 20 years old, you should see spiritual leadership from this young man, to be able to disciple your children and shepherd your family.
Yeah. I want to talk about this thing that Nick talked about, how boys need a mission. And this really was brought to life to me through family teams. Blake, you and I getting involved in that and joining the mastermind, but kind of associated with that, where this idea of like crafting a mission for your family. And so Nick is talking about it in the sense of like boys need a mission. But I'm like, man, men need, we need a mission. And I'd realized that for years in the business, we had a mission in the business, and it was what drove me to be excited in the business. And I was like, well, why wouldn't I have a mission for my family? And it took us a little bit. I think we talked in another episode about, it took us probably a year and a half, maybe even a couple years to nail what that is. Our family mission is to inspire people to pursue Jesus, family, and growth. And in that mission is why we're doing this. So I just think there's a focus and a clarity and a focus and a clarity that comes whenever you have a mission as a family, and that mission is big enough to hold, what everyone in your family is being called to do. And so anyway, I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on this idea of like boys need a mission. I think specifically the notes say boys need a mission, not medication. So that's a whole nother side of it that I think Nick spent quite a bit of time on. But what are y'all's thoughts on?
Something that jumped out to me, he talked about, in that section, he talked about how like he's done all these things with his life. He's been a Green Beret. I think he's been a Green Beret.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He's been a politician, and he's not sure, like he kind of, the way he talked about it sounded like he's not 100% sure that those career paths were the things that like God wanted him to do, but he's very sure that God wanted him to be a good father and a good wife. And I've felt that.
Good husband.
That's what I meant to say.
It's not that
Very
kind of show.
different.
I got a different.
Shoot. Yeah, you know what I meant to say. Be good to his wife is what I think I was trying to say. So be good to his wife and be a good father. And so I felt that. Like, I'm not 100% sure that God foreordained that I would be a children's book author or whatever other pursuits. Like, probably. Like, but whenever I've focused on like, God, I need your help to be a good dad. I need your help to be a good husband. I just know for a fact, and I can feel the wind at my back. Like, this is what God wants me to do. Good. And so God's going to help me with all this other stuff, but this is what God wants me to do. And I really felt the force of that when I like decided that I was going to step into fatherhood. Like, There was a long time where I used to say, "Oh, there's enough children in the world. Like, we don't need to make more." I think I even said that to Kenny one time. He was like, "Well, what about, be fruitful and multiply?" And I was like, "We did." And I'm so glad that God just radically changed my heart on this, because it's opened up this dimension of mission that I'm like very solidly sure, like if God wants nothing else for me, he wants me to be a good dad and a good husband. And so everything else is just...
I was gonna say, this is gonna be Lexi's favorite part of this episode when she watches this, because she talks about this in you, how she has seen this in you, because we had these conversations years ago too, where you'd say that kind of stuff, like not really caring to have kids. And the way that we have seen you come alive, it's one of Lexi's favorite examples, because fatherhood does that to men.
That's right.
It does that to men, even the non-Christian men. It gives them, it changes them. It changes you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the best things we can do, back to like, you think about mission and identity, as fathers, especially if you have sons, that is the son of God first, in terms of rooting identity, right? Our identity is in, we are a child of God, we are a son of God, you're a daughter of God if you're a female. But the next identity, that is the aspirational identity for your son, is to be a father one day. And as men, as fathers, we know what it does to you, just like you've experienced having Levi. And if we can get our sons to not just discover that one day, but they're yearning for that.
That's right.
They're yearning to be. So our goal as dads is, we're not trying to raise just good humans. We are trying to raise incredible fathers for our sons, that our sons become incredible fathers. We are trying to raise our daughters to be incredible mothers. And I think when you have that filter on, it's let them find out who they are. They got to discover themselves. Yeah. No, there could be certain particular vocational callings that, like you said, those could vary by season. But in terms of core identity, child of God, and then aspirationally, I want to be the best father that I can be. I want to be the best mother that I can be.
Yeah. I heard Rick Warren say this once. He said, God cares very little about where you live, what you do, or who you marry. God cares a lot about what kind of neighbor you are, what kind of employee you are, what kind of spouse you are. And when I heard that, at first I was like, do I really believe that to be true? And I think the more I mulled it over, I was like, I think I agree with him. People are like, oh, who should I marry? People ask this question all the time. It's a very modern question too. Who does God want me to marry? No one before 1900 asked that question.
Interesting.
Because if you live in some small town in Chemung, Iowa in 1824, who are you going to marry? The one girl in your town that's your age. That's it. You know what I mean? Oh, what am I going to do with my life? Well, it just so happened that when you turned 18, the town dentist died, so now you're a dentist because we need one. We have these existential crises in the modern world because we have so many options. Yeah. Kevin DeYoung has a book called "Just Do Something," where he talks about the idea of the automobile has created this crisis where we have options now. And it's oh, should I be a Methodist or a Baptist? Well, you grew up in a small town in 1890. There's only one church. It was a Methodist church. You're a Methodist. You didn't the fact that we have the automobile, we can now choose what we want. We have all these options, and it actually creates problems where Kevin DeYoung's sentiment is just choose something and do it well. God cares more that you've done it well. And so just people are who should I marry? I don't know, there's 10 girls. Pick one and go love them well. Just no, I know there's caveats, except there's red flags. Yes, I know, yes. Put all the balancing statements out there. But we in the modern world are so hyper focused on this particularity. We have these existential crises over things that no one in human history ever had. And we have more anxiety than we've ever had. We have more mental health issues in our society than we've ever had. Maybe a part of that, in part, that's fueled by or cultivated by the fact that we just we make the questions too hard.
Yeah.
And so it's who should I marry? I don't know, there's 5 girls. Okay, these 2 are just totally bat crap crazy. Don't marry those 2. But these 3 are fine. Just pick one and love her well. Go love her the way Christ loved the church. Go sacrifice for her. And I think we make too much of it sometimes. Where should I work? It doesn't matter. Just pick a job and go just love the heck out of your coworkers and work the hardest and be a man that's ethical. And I think for most men, coming back to mission, for most men, they're not able to do that outside of the context of being a husband and a father. There are exceptions, but for most men, they don't grow up. When I look at dudes who are 27 who are married with kids, and I look at dudes who are 27 and single, they're just very different.
Absolutely.
There's not even like, and I looked at myself, I'm realizing, oh, I'm 43 years old today. And like my lifestyle is comparable to a bunch of dudes that are a decade younger than me because they just happen to have kids that are the same age as me. Like so many times. So like for most men, again, just this caveat, there's exceptions, but for most men, they don't grow up until they're married with kids. And I think that is the thing that most people don't seem to realize. So you've got a bunch of dudes waiting till they're grown up before they get married, and a bunch of women looking for men who are already grown up before they marry them, but not grown up enough because they still want to be able to shape them. It's just like
I think
we're
men
all
tend
flawed.
to grow into their responsibility load. So like, I think I'm still in a season of life where I'm receiving from the Lord expensive responsibilities. Like it started when we bought a house.
Mortgages, car payment, diapers.
And I was like, God, I would want a simple life. And I'll go for these prayer walks and I'll be like, God, like if it were up to me, I would have a much simpler life than this. And I haven't heard from the Lord that he wants me to have a simpler life. And I suspect that the reason is because it has been a major forcing function for me to like grow up more. I don't know if grow up is even the right word. It's like I now have to tackle this level of responsibility load. Yeah. And because I have to, I have to.
You're going to rise to the occasion. That's right.
Yeah. And I think most men, that's how we're wired.
Yeah.
We're wired to tackle the responsibility that we've been laden with.
Yeah.
That's good.
I was going to say one of our friends, Danchez, we were talking about some of this stuff online, and he was like, he gave me this analogy of cornerstone and capstone in terms of the way that we view marriage these days. Like all throughout history, marriage was like a cornerstone for your growth and development. It wasn't like wait until you're here, and then once you're at this level of social status and financial responsibility and all these other things, then you can have the capstone achievement of now you're married.
That's a great point.
It was never that. It was the cornerstone actually of adulthood and growing, right? Versus today, where we look at it like, hey, it's this capstone achievement. And by the way, we've seen, again, the data shows this, it is harder and harder and harder to bring those lives together when you've built a whole life separately from each other.
I have a bunch of memories from my 20s. You know, God was kind. I had a lot of cool things. Traveled to 27 countries. Did a lot of business stuff. Been to spent time in every major city. All these memories are with either a single guy or with a bunch of like friends of mine. Yeah. My wife and I sit sometimes and we'll swap stories. My wife, she was 28 when we got married. She lived in France for a year and a half. She lived in multiple different places. We have all these great memories, but they're not together. Yeah. And it's like we swap stories, and then part of me sometimes laments that a little bit, like, And I hear other couples that got married younger that are my age, they're like, they'll tell stories of the things they did together 20 years ago. And I sometimes I'm a little bit jealous, to be honest. I'm like, I did all these cool things. Man, I wish those memories had been made with my wife.
I think this is an epiphany I'm having right now. I think that we mix up what's gratifying with what's satisfying. So our culture says that it is satisfying to pursue your ideal career. It's not satisfying to have your ideal career. It's gratifying. Like it's something that feels good.
That's right.
But it doesn't satisfy you. Like when I think about the things that I get to do creatively for work, it's very fun. It's very gratifying. I like to talk about it. I like to do it. I'm so grateful for it. But it doesn't satisfy me.
That's right.
The thing that is satisfying is I didn't let fear stop me from pursuing something that I wanted to do. When I think about that, that is satisfying. So there's like a fine line between like what's gratifying and what's satisfying. And I'm thinking about like, how am I going to teach this to Levi? Like when I'm trying to inspire him to pursue the things that he's curious about, that I think that God's given him like gifts around, like I'm going to have to tell him, these things are what's gratifying in life. These things are what's satisfying in life. And so there's nothing wrong with pursuing what's gratifying as long as it's either like holy or benign. But if you don't pursue what's satisfying, you will end up not satisfied.
I think there's something that I've heard Jeremy Pryor talk about a lot is this idea of like the language we use with our kids around their future as a a husband or a wife and a dad or a mother, and getting them excited for that future because of what is to come. And so one of the, like, I've caught myself just in lieu of that understanding of like, okay, I could try to get JJ really excited about, hopefully running Sweetfish one day, because I do hope that this is a multi-generational company, and I hope that he, runs the company one day. But maybe he does that, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he goes in the path of, a completely different path. But I do very much want him to be a great husband and a great father one day. And I can use language today that inspires that. And even just when he is like being bossy with our foster daughter, we'll say things, and I've heard you say this too, like, "Are you the daddy?" No, no, I'm the daddy. So you don't talk to her that way. You're not the daddy. Are you gonna? But are you gonna be a daddy one day? Yeah, I'm gonna be a daddy.
That's a
one
great
day.
addition.
Yeah, that's gonna be incredible when you're a daddy one day. Today you're not the daddy.
That's a
but
great addition.
You're gonna be a daddy
That's
one
so
day.
good. And I was going to say, like a practical thing of how we can be doing this, speaking that life into our kids.
Yes.
So like I try to do that just organically here and there with my daughters and with my son, but like speaking that over them of like, you're going to make a great dad one day.
Yes.
Like, look at the way you took care of Cheeky Girl over here. Like that's really good. Like you have a heart and the same thing with my daughters. So I think the more that we can intentionally weave that in, it becomes something that they aren't lost for like, oh, what do I do with my life?
Yeah.
They have this, again, sense of identity in Christ, and then they have this desire to be fruitful and multiply and to be a great father or mother.
So good. One other pivot, totally unrelated to anything we've said thus far. There's something that Nick Freitas said. He alluded to women basically having all the power in divorce. In the part of the video where he's talking about, women can divorce a man and use that. She basically is going to get most of the divorce court's going to side in her favor. She can use that. She can take the kids. You're going to pay me alimony until I get married to someone else. He's like, even though she's shacking up with some other guy, you're still paying her alimony. Like the system, use that term generically. Like American society is sort of stacked in favor of moms when a marriage doesn't go well. And there's all sorts of reasons. He didn't attach that in the video, but it got me thinking about this idea that he didn't explicitly allude to and talk about in the video, but I think is important to consider is the idea of privilege, and that there are things that every demographic can get away with. There are things that men can do and kind of get away with, and no one's gonna hold you accountable. And there's things that women can do that like you can get away with, no one's gonna hold you accountable. And similarly, I think we do that with race. I think there's things white people can do and get away with. No one's gonna hold them accountable. I think there's a lot of things black people can do and get away with, and no one's gonna hold them accountable. There's this idea of privilege. I don't know if that part of the video stuck out to you guys at all. And I had some thoughts on like, how does that shape how we think about marriage and family? But I thought I was asking you guys, like, did that stick out to you, or how did that land on you when you heard him talk about it?
I don't know if this is not going down the rabbit trail that you wanted to, but or a different one. What did fault divorce look like? Because I've heard our culture, I've heard people say talking heads on YouTube talk about how terrible no fault divorce is, and I agree. But when we had fault divorce, what did that look like?
It was just really hard to get divorced basically before the 70s. Like you had to basically prove you had a really good reason to get divorced.
Okay.
And so it was easy for people to say no, or the courts would say no, we're not going to grant a divorce.
The court could say no, you're not going to get a divorce.
Yeah, a divorce court could say no.
Okay.
Or family court. I don't know. Every jurisdiction would be different.
What would you have to show that it warranted, cheating?
Yeah, I think it was adultery, abuse, abandonment, basically some of the biblical categories
principles
that we'll talk about in another video. I think, or if you say irreconcilable differences, you have to prove that there was some major difference between the two of you that really was impossible to work through.
That sounds great.
When did that change?
70s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like a particular piece of legislation?
Yeah, there were, individual states began to do it individually. Like a couple states, I think, adopted it maybe in the 50s and 60s. But by the time you got to the mid-70s, pretty much across the board, no-fault divorce had been adopted in every state in the United States. I don't remember the exact years or nuances of that.
I feel wouldn't that just resolve the problem? Because then, if not, there's no perfect system, but wouldn't that resolve the problem for the majority of abuse cases? Not physical. I mean, like cases where someone is abusing divorce for the sake of like getting alimony or whatever. Because if they're divorcing, tell me if this is wrong, but if they have to prove that they have a legitimate reason for divorce, essentially the paycheck that's now going to the mother that's taking care of these children has been proven in court that it was warranted. Is that wrong? Is that how that would go? Like, essentially, like if my wife, God forbid, proved that I cheated on her, God forbid, it's like, well, yeah, now she's going to leave, and I still have an obligation to these kids.
Right. The alimony and the child support is warranted because she's proven that you violated the marriage vows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think that could be helpful. The reason I was asking this, the reason it stuck out to me, is because I think like in marriage, like we live in a society where, like if my wife gets up on social media tomorrow and says my husband abused me, the vast majority of people are going to believe her, no matter what. We know evidence is needed.
Yeah.
That's it. The accusation is evidence. That's it. If I get on social media and say my wife abused me, well, are you sure? Give us evidence. Or I'm going to get lambasted. What are you, effeminate? What are you the standard is clearly different. And so I think the reason I bring that up for men is like recognize you live in a society where the standard for you is different than your wife, and you cannot assume that the standard is the same. You have to live. I have to live as a husband and a father in such a way that I know that there's a standard that's different than for me and my wife. Like more is expected of me in society, and less is appreciated of me. I have to kind of know that going in. I have to like train my boys, like Josiah and Ezra. I have to train them from a young age. Going, you live in a society that doesn't value what you bring to the table as a man in many situations. Don't let that stop you from bringing to the table what a man needs to bring to the table. We live in a society that's not going to believe you when you say your wife is maybe not doing what she ought to do. Like you have to know that, prepare your heart for that, and like live in spite of that. And you can't be afraid of that. Like you have to allow that should shape or inform how you approach marriage and family.
Yeah. Have you guys ever been to marital counseling?
Oh yeah.
So not in this marriage, but I did a ton of marital counseling in the last one. Nicole and I wrote core values together when we got engaged, and one of them is the Holy Spirit is our counselor. And the reason we chose that as a core value is because I've never been let down by the counseling of the Holy Spirit. I've been let down a lot by the counseling of men. Oh wow! But anyways, the reason I thought of it is in all the marital counseling that I've done, and premarital and marital counseling that I've done, the assumption is going in is, all right, what did this man do that needs to get fixed so that this marriage can be fixed?
That many counselors have that
is the
approach.
starting assumption, and the counselor will run on that assumption. This is my experience. This is my experience with 4 different counselors. The counselor, so in all 4 cases, the counselor runs on that assumption until essentially you have proven to this counselor that you are doing everything the counselor is telling you to do, and it's still not working. And then they'll turn and go, all right, what's going on with you?
Yeah. We live in a culture, I mean, it's the believe all women syndrome, right? Like that's like that culture of like, if a woman says it, then it's true. And we in essence believe women aren't incapable of sinning. Like that's how we behave. Like, that's how we behave.
The comments on that one.
I was gonna say, I know the females are gonna hate this portion. I've experienced some of this too. Of like just the kind of there is like an inherent bias. It's weird to say this because it feels like we're talking about the way that men are oppressed, and it just feels weird to talk about
but it's
being
real.
oppressed.
I mean,
because we hate when people victim.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of okay with it. I'm okay with the assumption, like, let's start with the man.
What I was gonna say is like
God said, let's deal with the man first.
That's right.
That's where I was going. Is like I think there's a good thing about it too.
That's right.
Of like this, like you said, the standard is different. It's higher, and guess what? Own it.
Yeah.
Suck it up, right? But at the same time, like it doesn't mean that there can't be like grave injustice is done and complete unfairness when it comes to the court system, the way people do counseling, marriage counseling. But I think just that principle of the man's supposed to lead. Like
right.
we're gonna like the level of, and even the way we think about back to parenting and family. I think he talked about this too in this episode. Freitas or Freitas, by the way.
I think
I think it's Freitas.
Freitas. But like how he talked about how he speaks differently to his sons than he speaks to his daughters.
That's right.
Like, that's a good thing.
That's
like,
right.
We have a higher bar for our sons on a lot of things, and our tone and even like the way that we give tough love is going to look a lot different towards our sons than it's going to look to our daughters, right? And there's something like very healthy and good about that.
That's right.
But it doesn't mean that we should ignore or act like it's okay that there's like grave injustices that are happening to good men in the legal system because their wife is actually the one at fault, or that counselors are blind to the fact that women could also be wrong. And I'm sure there's people that experience the other side of that. Like I have a close family member who is a woman who has gone through similar stuff, and she felt like the cards were kind of stacked against her, and the man was very manipulative, and the counselor was believing her. So people can have both sides of that too.
Right.
But in general, I think the anecdotal evidence is pretty strong that like the standard is different for men. And there's a good part about that, but there's a part that we have to watch for too.
All right, so I want to get into final takeaways before we wrap this thing up. I think mine, as I listened to this, the overarching feeling that I had walking away from this was this desire to reject passivity and
That's good.
like be more intentional, be more proactive, hold a higher standard for myself. Have strength and courage, and it's hard not to watch Nick Freitas and not have that sentiment in any conversation he has. But that was kind of my overarching takeaway from this: is, man, there are some ways in the way I'm pursuing my wife that I'm not that I'm being passive, and I need to more aggressively pursue her heart, proactively
Take initiative.
and in the same, in the same with our kids. So that was my kind of overarching takeaway. What about y'all?
Mine was very similar. I mean, kind of going back to the minute, like, when I was talking about like the responsibility, the standards, like, yes, the standards are higher, but as you said, like, that's actually a good thing. God gave Adam the mission. God gave Adam the mandates to lead, and therefore it's my responsibility to take initiative. If there's a brokenness in my marriage, it may or may not be my fault, but it's my responsibility to proactively try to solve it. Not everything's going to be my fault. Some things are my fault. Some things are my wife's fault. Sometimes it's a combination of things. Usually we're both at fault to some percentage, but the responsibility is on me to proactively intervene when we're giving each other the silent treatment. It's my responsibility to humbly break the silence, to apologize first, to ask for forgiveness, to seek mercy first, to lead the way, be proactive.
Yeah.
Which is the hardest thing to do, but it's the good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my biggest probably takeaways was how he talked about how basically the success of a marriage, and I would say the success of a family, is about submission to something outside of the home, and that is to Christ and to God. And so just like that reminder, and it sounds very simple, but that reminder of like, we know the biblical model. We didn't talk about this one. That would have been a great conversation for this episode too, but the biblical model for male headship in a home, and also the biblical model for male sacrifice in a home. Those things come together. But that only works well when the man is submitting to God and and to Christ, just as Christ is the head of the church, that he actually is submitted to Christ. But that model for family, that is the God designed that model. He designed he gave us our mission, and he said, hey, wives submit, men be the head. And the way that that plays out, it only works if the man is actually truly submitted to Christ.
Yeah. Well, this is not my big takeaway, but on that topic, this is something I think about whenever the topic of like male leadership, male headship in the marriage comes up, is men are the head of the family, whether they like it or not.
That's right.
So like literally whether you like it or not, whether your wife agrees or not, whether your kids, like whether they intellectually agree or not, you will end up leading your family, either leading them into passivity and chaos or leading them into like a godly way of doing family. Because the statistics bear that out. Like when the father goes to church, there's I'm going to get this stat wrong, but it's something like there's 70% chance that the kids will remain, and it's 30 for the wife, and that's just the fact that whether you like it or not, you are the leader of the house.
That's right.
So if you're a passive person, then you're just sort of leading your house into passivity and chaos.
Yeah.
So I think about that. So whenever I'm encouraging a man, I'm like, look, like I got into a conversation with somebody yesterday where he was like, well, my wife won't let me do that. And I'm like, you are the head of the house. Right. You don't ask for permission to be the head of the house. God looks at you as the head of the house. So you now must be in that role because that's the role that you've been assigned. Mm-hmm. So you're not looking to your wife for permission to do something that you know your family ought to be doing. You look to your wife to go, honey, we need to do this. I'm going to lead us in this because this is what we need to do. That's right. And that's like a really extreme case, which we didn't even talk about, like what happens when you disagree. But anyways, my big takeaway wasn't any of that. It was the vocational thing. Like just, it was enlightening to hear him talk about how he's not sure that Green Beret or politician was what necessarily God wanted him to do. But whenever he's thought, God, what are you doing? I want to be involved in what you're doing. He feels the satisfaction of like, I'm doing what God's about doing. And it's just cool that God will partner with us in what our passions are, or he'll redeem them, or he'll redirect them. If our heart is like, God, I either want you to be involved in this, or I want to be involved in whatever you're doing. And that's something that I'm wrestling with God with all the time. Love it.
We got spirit, and I know you hear it. There's no give up, give up, give up, give up in us.